Hi-ho and a warm welcome to my very first countdown. As you might know, I'm a big fan of Fire Emblem. I can't even explain why, it's just interesting. Perhaps it's the always new story, perhaps the great choice of characters, I don't know. What I do know is the fact that I'm always interested in the antagonists of these games. And that's the reason this first countdown I make is about the villains I like most. Remember, I can only include villains from games I actually played. This excludes Fire Emblem Awakening, as it wasn't out in Europe yet when I made this countdown. Besides, this is my personal opinion. If your favorite is not on it, I'm sorry, but it is like it is. With that being said, let's do this! In the battle known as the Scouring, a demon dragon was defeated and sealed. This meant the end of the war. At the time of Fuin no Tsurugi, King Saphir reanimated said dragon, whose Manakiri form is a fragile girl? Yep, that's true. Aiden is or better said, the mage dragon of Fuin no Tsurugi, who's responsible for creating Burn's war dragons, and boy do they get on my nerves. Aiden herself is weak. Terribly weak. She is, in fact, the weakest final boss of all Fire Emblem games I've played, and that includes for Mortis. What makes her interesting to me is her backstory. She was once a divine dragon, who was kidnapped and brainwashed by the fire dragons so she would create war dragons. When Hartmut faced her in the last battle of the Scouring, he hesitated to slay the soulless monster known as the demon dragon, as he first saw it in the shape of the dark priestess Aiden, and instead sealed her out of pity. I personally can understand that. Even though you must consider Hartmut didn't knew about it, how can you not have pity for someone whose mind was crushed more or less? Makes the scene in which Faye tries to teach Aiden how to live that much more heartwarming. Throughout my whole Let's Play Fire Emblem 6, I tried to find nicknames for the scum, and I'm not really happy with what came out of it. Anyway, Nation of Fuin no Tsurugi is one of those characters you just love to hate. Practically the whole first half of the game is you undoing whatever mischief Nation has done, which means a lot of work. Because even though Nation is somehow the lowest of the three Wyvern generals, it's still him who causes the most damage we are aware of. Additionally, his personality is the complete opposite of the ones of Branya and Murdoch. He's arrogant, a narcissist, and at one point in the game even pedophile, and thank God this character trait doesn't appear anywhere else in the game. And to top it off, he's a traitorous ass. This is completed by the fact that he's a coward who openly tells his very own lieutenant he's supposed to be cannon fodder so Nation himself can make a run for it. But this all gathers in the hatred of the player and makes it so satisfying to finish him off and steal his treasure beforehand. 1990, the first Fire Emblem game Anko Koryo to Hikari no Tsurugi was released. But of course only in Japan, as such a complicated game cannot be handled by Western gamers. It wasn't until 18 years later this game came over the sea, packed into a DS game and under the name Shadow Dragon. And it gave us Garnev. Garnev was once a pupil of the White Sage Goto, but after Goto chose Miloa as his successor, Garnev killed Miloa and created the I'm Hulu magic, which makes him practically invincible. Garnev first appears in the middle of the game, chapter 15 to be precise, in which there is no possibility to kill him, so your only option is to run away and hope he doesn't kill anyone on his way through the desert until he leaves the battlefield and claims math isn't important enough to waste his time. As I said, Garnev is almost invincible because of Imhulu, except for the case someone uses the spell Starlight, which you can miss pretty easily, and if that happens, you cannot take the Falchion from Garnev, which drastically increases the difficulty of the remaining two chapters, including the final battle against Medeus. To top it off, Garnev kidnapped and brainwashed Tiki, who can only be released by Bantu. You know, Bantu? This fire dragon dying of old age absolutely no one uses? I haven't played Fire Emblem Monjo no Nazo, and thus don't know what exactly he does in that game, but his appearance in Shadow Dragon alone proves what kind of a bastard this guy is. My number 7 is someone who only seeks one thing throughout 2 games: death. It is Sephiroth. I said Sephiroth, not Sephiroth. Sephiroth is responsible for almost everything that happens in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. And what for? He wants to violently awake the goddess Ashira, so she makes her judgment and annihilates all life in Tellius, including Sephiroth's own. Throughout the finale of Radiant Dawn, you see memories of Sephiroth, in your second playthrough more than in your first, and his backstory is kinda tragic. First, he sealed the goddess of chaos Yun inside of his medallion, this game's Fire Emblem, and as a Laguz falls in love with the Bjork woman at Heroine Altina, and gets a child with her, losing his Laguz powers in the process as well as his mind for a short while. In his self-chosen exile in Goldoa, he tries to convince the Black Dragon King Dagonsea to help the enslaved Laguz, failing at that. He then finds out that his descendants are branded, feeling deep grief for them, and finally loses all hope for the world when the Banyan people burn down the Serene's forest, caused by false accusations of the Banyan Senate. After his plan more or less failed and succeeded at the same time, he is fought as the penultimate boss of the game. And despite being a Heron, the weakest of the Laguz, he is not weak. One reason is his magic tome Cradolet, which does a buttload of damage and hits almost every time. Additionally, he owns the Rudol gem, raising his defense for 10 points, as well as a rewarp staff he uses to escape dangerous situations. He also possesses the Mantle skill, protecting him against critical hits and giving him 40 points of health every turn. To top it all off, the animus spirits of the tower protect him, and as these spirits respawn endlessly, you can prepare yourself for a long battle. On your second playthrough, it is possible to recruit Sephiroth, although you have to do some things beforehand. The Black Knight must have been used in the finale of Part 1, Ike must have fought the Black Knight in Part 3 with both of them surviving, and Peleus has to survive. The second part of this impossible to find out on your own process is the most difficult one, and it does not even pay out very much unless you want another Ashira staff and a useless dark magic user. Almost everything in the Jugdral games that goes wrong does at least indirectly happen because of one single man. Manfroy, Archbishop of the Lobt sect. I don't want to go into detail how he succeeded in taking control of the whole continent, but at least his plans for Emperor Elvis shall be explained. To revive his Lord Loptus, Manfroy needs someone who holds Major Loptus' blood, which makes him focus on Lord Elvis, actually a righteous young man. Through manipulation and blackmail, Manfroy succeeds in convincing Elvis to unite Jugdral under the Grand Bell Empire to create a peaceful world. Additionally, he succeeds in making Elvis fall in love with the main character Sigurd's wife, Daedra, who also possesses minor Loptus blood. For those who are interested, Daedra is Elvis' half-sister, which Manfroy knows of course. Through this incest, Prince Julius is born, holding Major Loptus blood, and with that is a perfect host for the Dark God Loptus. Nobody knows for how long Manfroy actually planned this, but it takes at least 17 years to finally stop him. And even though it drastically raises the difficulty of the final fight against Julius, it's not even necessary to fight Manfroy in the finale. It's a little bit disappointing that Manfroy has no unique class, but instead is a normal Dark Bishop instead of, say, an Archbishop of the likes. But the fact that he pulls strings throughout the whole game and is successful for something around 20 years is enough for me to place him at this position. Nitsudan Production proudly presents The most beautiful thing this world has ever seen. You could say beauty incarnate. I hereby give you Duke Oliver of Tanis. This man has, to put it simple, mental problems. His ego is larger than Dirk Nowitzki, as is the corruption around him. For the chapters in Path of Radiance that take place in Banyan, he can be called the main villain, as he is deep into the Lagos slavery, which Empress Sanaki wants to uncover together with the Grail mercenaries. Oliver bought the Huron Raisin from Raven King Naysala, for whom he has plans. Better not think about what that means. After his house got a visit from the Grail mercenaries who found Raisin, Oliver escapes into the Serene's forest, throwing you into an epic battle against the corrupt senator. The chapter in which Oliver is the boss is split into 4 parts, and with that, longer than the finale. Throughout this chapter, the Grail mercenaries utterly thrash Oliver's troops before they finally arrive at Oliver. Sadly, Oliver is a bishop and with that, very easy to defeat. It's also possible that Taiban, Ulki or Janov kill him for you, in which case you lose his Nosferatu tome. However, it is very satisfying to take down this lunatic and watch the forest being resurrected and Ike being promoted because, yes, killing Oliver is important enough to name Ike a lord and with that, a noble man. Oliver was also beloved enough to return in Radiant Dawn, in which it is even possible to recruit him, even though he didn't change a bit, which Ike notices. The now following man is, to put it simple, in appearance and character, a medieval version of Hojo. Wrong Hojo. Yes, that's the one. And with that, let's welcome Aizuka. Aizuka is yet another of those characters I love to hate. He views all Lagoos as his test objects, in which he tests his Feral One drug, created by him. This includes the friendly tiger Muarim. Aizuka views himself as the greatest genius on Earth and brilliant strategist, even though most of his strategies are just dirty tricks. The worst of all, though, is his influence on Prince Peleus, who is naive enough to believe everything Aizuka tells him, including signing the blood pact with Senator Lekain and the use of the Feral One drug. After part 1, Aizuka suddenly disappears and is not seen again until part 4, where he's the boss of the chapter Unforgivable Sin. Count Bastion imprisoned him somewhere between part 1 and part 4. The reason? Aizuka used his drug on Lord Renning to create Bertram, one of Ashnard's 4 riders. In battle, Aizuka uses the dark magic Balberith, making him extremely dangerous. Additionally, he is able to summon 4 feral ones per turn, including red dragons. And if that weren't enough, Aizuka owns this annoying rewarp staff he almost literally uses every time you get even remotely close to him. But it's so goddamn satisfying to kill him with Peleus. Oh, and besides, Aizuka also appeared in Path of Radiance, solely for the reason to say, hey, I'm a guy who could be important in the next game. Say, do you remember your childhood friends? Erika and Ephraim sure do, and are forced to face one of them in battle. Prince Leon of Grado is theoretically not an evil person, but his desperate attempt to heal his ill father and, after failing that, reviving him, made his body the host of the Demon King from Mortis. As Leon only acted out of love and never intended to harm anyone, it's not easy to call him a baddie and kill him without remorse like the Mr. Number 4. Making it worse, if you chose Erika's route, his soul is already almost completely consumed by the Demon King. In Ephraim's route, he is conscious the whole time. None of these choices is any better than the other. As a consumed soul, it's hard to see for Mortis insulting Leon's feeling while over-exaggerating them. As a conscious, if manipulated person, it's hard to see Leon knowing that he is manipulated by Formortis, but accepts the collateral damage to save his loved ones, even though he actually actively kills them. The most tragic part of the whole game is this guy's death scene, as no matter which route you chose, at the brink of death, Leon is himself and happy to be killed before the Demon King returned. The return of the Demon King was prevented, wasn't it?
As if.
Yep, that's right. To add insult to injury, Leon's death didn't prevent anything. For Mortis returns, and it's up to you to slay him with the sacred twins you collected throughout the game as revenge for ruining the life of this most dear young man. What happens if you play around with dark magic for over 500 years? You lose your mind. A good example would be Nergal from Fire Emblem Rekka no Ken. After losing his wife Ayenir, a dragon, in the Scouring, Nergal hid his children Ninian and Niels behind the Dragon's Gate, which he promised to open once he saved their mother. But after 1000 years of unprotected use of ancient magic, he forgot what he wanted to use this dangerous power for. Everything he remembers is the fact that he has to open the Dragon's Gate, and in his twisted mind, he came to the conclusion that he wanted to open it to take the dragon's quintessence. Ironically, the first dragons he summons through the gate are his very own children, from which he promptly takes the power. In the present, Nergal continues to collect quintessence to open the Dragon's Gate a second time. For this, he uses the righteous mercenary group Black Fang, the by him created and, I admit it, cool looking morphs, as well as the corrupt Marquesas of Lucia. In battle, Nergal is not to be underestimated, as his Ereshkigal tome does a lot of damage, while he himself has perfect defense and resistance stats. And once he's finally defeated, in the moment of his death he understands that he forgot what he originally wanted the power for, but only if all 3 Kashuna chapters are completed. And then he succeeds in opening the gate and summons 3 fire dragons, of which one of is the final boss. Which is quite sad, as Nergal is a way more interesting boss than this characterless fire dragon Ninian is too fragile to kill. I suppose our number 1 got the right to introduce himself.
I trust you know who you face, Zelgius, commander of this army.
I think it wasn't that hard to guess. After all, he is my avatar and my intro. Both of my intros to be exact. Commander Zelgius as the Black Knight is the dragon of both of the people responsible for everything going wrong in the Tellius games. To be exact, in Path of Radiance for Ashnard and in Radiant Dawn for Sephiroth. That alone is enough to give the protagonists a reason to fight him. But here comes the personal touch. It was Zelgius as the Black Knight who killed Ike's father Grail. On screen. As a person, Zelgius is an honorable man following a certain codex. For example, he doesn't attack unarmed people. Furthermore, Zelgius has a great sense of duty and as a soldier follows almost any command of his superior Valtome, even if it is suicide to do so, with the single exception being the order to attack the unarmed Elincha, for which he promptly gets a death sentence, which he of course survives. This man survives a lot, come to think of it. Being defeated by Ike, let a castle crush on his head, survive execution, and finally survived Ashira's judgment without damage. Talking about being defeated by Ike. That one was a lie. The Black Knight is the only enemy in the whole game where it is pure dumb luck if you defeat him or not. You've got 6 turns to defeat him with your units being only Ike and Mist. Only Ike with Ragnell is able to do any kind of damage, and the little damage he does with a normal attack gets healed by Zelgius in his turn. That means the Black Knight can only be defeated if the game decides to let Ike use Aether, which you can prevent by forgetting to teach it to him, in which case you have to hope for a critical hit to appear, which are even rarer or don't appear at all. But Zelgius, of course, will use Luna every other turn, almost killing Ike in the process. Luckily, it is possible to escape the fight if you find yourself unable to defeat Zelgius, in which case you get Ina instead of Nazir. In Radiant Dawn you can finally play as the Black Knight for a few chapters, and there is not a single person who can kill him in those, while he utterly thrashes every enemy in a single strike, preferably with Eclipse. This makes the battle against him in the Tower of Guidance that much more disappointing, as he lost the protection against normal weapons and thus can be killed in a single turn by using a hammer. The fact that the battle theme isn't Selgius' battle theme, the strong but unstoppable destiny, the Black Knight's battle theme, makes the battle lose its intensity, as well as the strong is way more exciting than unstoppable destiny. We also know that Selgius is the Black Knight at this point of the game. First, because Rano flat out told Ike that he is, and second, the Black Knight unveiled himself with Selgius the Brave as background music. Still, Selgius the Black Knight is my favorite Fire Emblem villain. He appears in my favorite games, has a nice personality, is a challenging enemy, at least in Path of Radiance, and in Germany is voiced by Detlef Bierstedt, the same guy who voices Stan Smith in the German version of American Dad. I hope my incompetence in explaining things didn't get on your nerves. With this, my first countdown is completed, and all I have to say is, till the next time, see ya later!